Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of my amazing, if I call it myself, amazing Urban Legends podcast, where we focus on people who are doing outstanding things in our schools. And I am so blessed today to have with me Arthur and Sandy, the dynamic duo from Nashville, who are going to talk with us about their journey in education, talk to us about this amazing program that they have going on and some additional books and things that they are publishing. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Welcome, Arthur. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Welcome.
So before we get started into the real thick of the stuff, tell us a little bit about your journey in education and actually how you all met, because I heard the story and it's pretty cool.
I am in my 27th year of teaching, and I have experience. I began my teaching just out of college in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was teaching at a private Christian school. Then I moved to a public school. And then for the past 10 years, I've been in a charter. A different lifestyle completely. When 9 years in the private Christian school, it was tuition based, all the resources you could possibly imagine, not very diverse at all. And then when I moved to the public school, it was a life change for me, and just totally different atmosphere than I'd ever experienced. And I struggled. It was eye-opening for me, and classroom management used to be a strength of mine. And that is how I actually met Arthur. He was doing his math and music program. And I remember just really struggling, first graders. I'm really struggling each day, like, oh, how am I going to get them to stay in their seats? How am I going to get them to listen? I had all this teaching that I wanted to do, but I just wasn't ready. But I knew every Tuesday at 1 p.m., everything was going to be okay, because Arthur Thompson came in with his math and music program.
That is like the most beautiful education story I've ever heard. And Sandy, after Arthur introduces himself, I want to come back to why you think it was a struggle, or how well, and you'll probably talk a little bit about that too, but how what you learned from what Arthur was doing with the children helped you as a class, to get better at classroom management. All right, Arthur, tell us about your journey.
Okay, well, I've always done a lot of work with children. I've worked with children who were incarcerated from ages 13 to 18. Also, I worked with a lot of children whose parents were incarcerated, and I would do programs in camps for those kids. Mm-hmm. So, and I grew up in a big family. I have a lot of nephews and nieces, and I love to work with kids. I love teaching and giving back what I've learned. Mistakes as well as my achievements. I like to teach them about that, and how to avoid certain things, and also how to put their best foot forward and focus. And I wanted to get into the school system, but they wouldn't allow me to get in with music, because they were, at that time, the music programs were being taken out of the schools, all of the arts programs.
They still are.
Yeah, yeah. So they just focus on sports and academics, learning how to take tests to better their, what do you call it?
The state test scores, and it's become like everything is about that, and
all about that. And I noticed that the kids weren't doing really well in that, and they weren't doing really well in school because they didn't have any outlets, especially kids that weren't so much athletic, but they were more artistic type children.
Yes.
Yeah, they like drawing or music or singing or dancing, but they weren't getting fed. So I went to the Arts Council in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and introduced my drum speak program. They didn't believe it was going to work. So the first thing they did was threw me in uh, the prison for children to do my drum speak program,
Right.
which was great. I went in and brought drums into the facility, and I was there for 3 months, and it was a huge success, both with the boys and the girls. Well, I wanted to broaden my horizons, and I wanted to get into the actual school system. So I came up with the idea to create a math program, use music as a catalyst. I mean, math as a catalyst, but music is the goodie that they get.
Yes.
So
yes.
I came up with a curriculum that taught math, equations, and also taught music skills. So it started with reading music, teaching them like treble clef, bass clef, quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, whole notes. And then while I was teaching them about the half notes and the quarter notes, etc., I was just putting it in number forms. Like a quarter note is one beat. So 2 quarter notes, 1 + 1 is 2. So it started at the very basic. And then it just got a little more deeper as the book, towards the end of the book. Right. So I was able to capture the kids, capture their attention. With the drumming on the desk. I would bring drums, but when it got really popular, I had to be at 6 different classrooms in one day, and taking drums from one classroom to the next classroom was too much. So we just used the desk as the drums, and I couldn't get in the music classes, so I went in during their math periods. So whenever the classes had math, then I would come in. So I came up with characters for the book, and I came up with all these things. And the first person to endorse the book and help sponsor was George Kaiser Family Foundation out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He saw my outline. He immediately said he wanted to endorse that program. So he helped where I could get into the schools and also print books with the Williams Company and the Arts and Humanities Council of Tulsa. So I got in the classrooms, and I saw a big change as soon as I walked in, because I mean, I know I look regular today, but I came in and I wasn't dressed like your regular teachers. I wasn't wild out, but I just had my rock and roll look, my music that I use, just I look when I go play shows. And I would come in, and the kids instantly would be like, "Oh my, who's this guy? He looks like us, but he don't look like us."
Yes.
He don't. And one kid made a comment. He's like, "Are you sure you're a teacher? You teach us?" I said, "Why would you ask that?" And like, "Well, because usually when the male teachers come, they either look like preachers or pimps." Meaning the suits and the matching gaiters or whatever.
Yes.
Because that's what they knew in their neighborhood.
Right.
And I looked different. I was like, well, yeah, I'm a teacher, but I'm a musician. Oh, really? I'm like, yeah. So let me show you how this works. So I started working with the kids, teaching them numbers, teaching them note values. And then that just became the word value. I was able to start teaching them about self-value.
Oh.
And so once they locked into that and understood self-value, that it's up to them to learn as much as they could, but also help others who were struggling, and be kind to one another, stop fighting and bickering and acting crazy and being silly towards one another, work together. And I would split the classroom up and give half the classroom the color red and the other half the color blue. And I would have my math and music posted on the board, and all of the blue notes would stomp when they saw their notes. The red notes would clap when they saw their notes. So now they're working together. Yeah. And they started helping each other get it together so their group could be better than the other group. But in turn, when we worked together, when they worked together, they had a rhythmic song, which was also math equations using the numbers. So it started working, and then they became more relaxed. So when it was time for testing, we would do some of these exercises, and they would calm them down, and they would be able to test
Better than,
better
yes.
than normal, because we took out all the stress of it. And it,
Amazing.
so when I would come to school, the school where Sandy worked, it was the same thing. When I walked in, the kids, they were kind of a little bit rambunctious. But
That's a good word for it.
yeah. So once I let them use that energy, not take it away, use it to make noise. They thought, what? It's okay for us to make noise and beat on the desk, I'm like, yeah, but you got to beat this certain thing. You got to just play. You got to, I'm going to let you have a moment where we just have fun, just act crazy and beat on the desk and make all noise you want. But then we're going to calm down, and then we're going to do this and this. And then we're going to put all that in perspective, and which came up with, it helped them learn how to count, helped them learn how to do math, from addition to subtraction to multiplication to division to fractions. But also they learn how to read music. So now they could read music. And then once they learned the rhythms, then I taught them about lines and spaces and notation. So they were able to know how to change the sound, the tone, by putting the quarter note on a different line or a space, and it would make a different sound. So now the kids that weren't interested so much in drumming, but they wanted to play guitar or piano,
they had skills also.
Yeah. So it just helped them when they went to private lessons or whatever, or a guitar teacher would come in and work with them. So I hired other musicians to come in and work because they got so busy at so many schools. So I put a keyboard player at one school, put a guitar player at another school, another drummer at another school, and I taught them. I had my own private classes with those instructors, taught them how the book should go and how they should go from one page. Always everyone stay on the same page. Some kids go fast.
Yes.
And I pull them back. And instead of letting them sit there, I would send them to kids that were struggling. So they would teach those kids.
That's cool.
And kept everybody on the same page, because it's a program that needs to be paced. So when we get to the end result of making a song or doing 100 math equations, everybody's there at the same time. Everybody knows, and nobody's more advanced or behind. And that's how it kind of worked out. And that's how we met when I would go in her classroom. And
so Sandy, when you watched what he was doing, did your management then get better? And how did you start to interact differently? Or what did you learn through watching what he was doing with students?
Right. It changed my whole line of thinking and of teaching, and just everything that he was just explaining. The thing that I noticed about Arthur was that he met the children where they were at. Nice. I'd been teaching for, like I said, 9 years before. I had really high test scores. I had great class management, but I had a different set of students in my classroom, so I went in there with totally different expectations. I'd give them a piece of paper and it would end up, thrown at someone else or on the ground. I'd hand them a pencil and it'd be stuck to the ceiling tile.
Yes.
But Arthur came in and they didn't need any paper. They didn't need any pencil. He just met them, with the clapping, with the drumming, with the clap on red and the snap on blue. And I was just amazed. It was all about, relationships, because I had all this knowledge. I remember one time he was even teaching a lesson on multiplication, and I had first graders. So I'm like, excuse me, they don't know how to multiply. And he just looked at me and smiled. He's like, oh, okay. And without saying it, he's like, go sit down. I got this. And I sat there, and within that period, that hour, they were multiplying, and I'm just like, what in the world? So then I kept my mouth shut and I just watched.
And just let him do his thing.
Exactly. And I learned it's all about relationships. The quote that kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. So
yes.
I started with that and realized that he saw each child as their own unique individual. And I started doing that. That was my assessment, not this piece of paper for a test. It's like, where are you? What do you enjoy? What's your passion? And then use that. So
I love that.
yeah, since then it's changed my whole style of teaching, and I'm still smiling at year 27.
And you didn't give up. That's awesome.
No, right.
So, okay.
I have
So
to say,
this,
I had to go to Sandy once I started teaching in the classroom full time when we both got hired at a charter school.
okay.
Started teaching music full time. So I had to go to her for, help on, inputting everything in the computer and writing
That stuff.
and writing lesson plans.
Plans.
I'm like, how am I going to write a lesson plan on feeling, intuition, and that? I mean, so I had to be very creative, but she had to. She taught me how to do that and what that meant, what the administration was looking for.
Yeah.
So I had to get the learn how to do that so I can have the best of both worlds, and ended up being that way. It was great because once I wrote my lesson plans and they read my lesson plans, it was so funny because they're like, how are you going to teach this? And I said, well, you just need to come sit in my classroom and watch, and they did. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, well, this is how it works.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like cooking, you got to get the right seasonings and
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah. So yeah, so she helped me with that.
So yeah, that's such a cool. I still love the story. Okay, so now music and math as a thing. You described the book a little bit. I know that you're now like doing it everywhere, and well, you got a book coming out. So you need to tell us about your products, and you need to tell us and help people understand how they can get more information. Like if there are people who are in Chicago or people who are in another city, can they access your information online or?
Well, I have a very active imagination.
Okay. All right.
I have since I was a kid. And so what I've done is take my life experiences along with my imagination and begin to write books. And that's how I came up with the Math and Music book, but also came up with a fables book called Fables and African Tales. And it's a blend of true life stories and some imagination. And of course, with fables, I turned some of the characters into animals or plants or whatever, but they all speak, and it's very cool. And it's very helpful life lessons. And it's a children's book, but it's for adults as well. That's the fourth book that I've written that's out. And then and now I have a new book coming out. It's called The Lion in the Mason Jar. And it's a great book, man. I love it.
If you may say so yourself. Okay, tell me about The Lion in the Mason.
I know. I think and that people are gonna like it. I hope they like it. It'll be out in May. But Sandy she's the administrator of all of my products. So she can tell you how to get it better and quicker than I could.
Yes.
I'm a creator. And I have many more books coming I'm already writing and, putting outlines to. I don't sleep a lot. That's in between concerts and tours but yeah, this book, The Lion in the Mason Jar, is coming out in May. It's a great book. It's an adventure. It's heartfelt, warming. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna cry. You're gonna enjoy the triumph and all of that in the book. But I think people will enjoy reading this book. But it's from the heart.
Love it. So where do we get it, Sandy?
Go to arthurthompsondrums.com for the fables and the math and music and all of that. This new book, Lion in the Mason Jar, in just a couple of weeks, it's available for pre-sale. It'll be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can pre-sale it there. And then the official release is May 26th.
Awesome. I'm so excited about that. So if there is when say I'm a parent or a teacher in Chicago, because most of my people aren't here, and we get, say, The Lion in the Mason Jar, How would you suggest people use that at home? Or what are some strategies you use when you are reading your books to children? Because a lot of times I find that parents, it's not like they don't want to read books to their kids. Sometimes you just don't know how. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, just
I
sit
would
them there and read
say,
it to them. But then, like, what would you say is a strategy for using your text?
I would say if you read it as if you're telling a story, like a storyteller. Even when I preview my books to kids to a classroom, sometimes I don't really read a book. I mean, I wrote it, so I know the book, I know the stories, but I will use my djembe, which is my African drum. I would use it as background music, and I would tell a story. And if
Ah,
it's a story that's not, I have some stories in the fables book that it's an interaction. You have the kids interact. You got to explain what they need to do, and then when you get to those parts, they interact with you. But I
okay.
would be very animated with the stories. So you kind of got to get out. If you're an introvert, if you have to kind of step outside the box a little bit and not just read the story to them. You have to make the sounds, you have to make them do the movement, make the faces, and connect with them. And once you do that, it's a wrap. You and they learn. And once you get their attention, I learned this in music, doing music. You don't, the first thing when you come out on the stage, you don't just start giving instructions to the audience. You don't say, stand up, put your hands together. None of that, because they haven't heard you yet. So once you play some really good tunes and then you see them clapping on their own and bobbing their head and getting into it, then you can ask them to do something and they'll do it. But you got to capture them first. And
It
that's
seems it would be a motivator to the person who's playing the music also, while it's motivating the audience.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you can feel it from your especially from kids, because they're
Oh,
raw with theirs. Like,
right away.
awesome.
And I
Awesome.
think especially with the fables book, I just wanted to add to with parents, that's one that I think every parent would love reading with their children. It's full of characters that students can relate to, children can relate to. They can see themselves in the characters. And then just the messages at the end of each fable, Arthur wrote the lesson, the theme, and those are things we can all apply to, like never give up and be true to who you are, and forgiveness and love, because he's going to see the characters making mistakes, and that's okay. Family, those bonds. So just those conversations, they're short, so little bedtime stories, and one at a time, get them, leave them wanting another one tomorrow.
I can't wait. I can't wait to get my copy of the book. Okay, so before we do the final question, what the books that are out already that people can get on Amazon? Tell us those one more time, Stan.
Well, Amazon is just the new book. The other books are all
Okay.
on arthurthompsondrums.com.
Okay.
They can contact us. They can, the Professor Brown series is there. The math and music books are there, and Fables is there as well.
Got it. Because I'm getting those as soon as we get off. Okay, so here's the final question. Usually the way that I end is I ask people to reflect on a quote. When I hear your story, it reminds me of a particular person or a quote. And for you all, of course, it's about the arts. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on this quote by Barbara Jordan. It says, "The arts are not a frill. The arts are a response to our individuality and our nature and help to shape our identity. The arts do not discriminate. The arts lift us up." What do you both think? Because you've convinced me. I knew the importance of the arts just by all my time in schools. And I used to see how kids responded when they were able to move their bodies, or when they heard a song, or we sang a song of music that they liked, or we did something in their art classes that they really liked. It was like a different kid. You didn't have to say, be quiet, sit down. Like, they just got into it.
Yeah.
It's the greatest almost classroom management tool ever.
Yes.
Just to play music in the morning when kids are entering makes a different class than, get to your seat. Dude, like, so, okay. So I don't know if you can remember the quote, but the arts lift us up and they do not discriminate. What do you think it said?
To me, the arts is a universal language. there's certain kids that are great at reading. There's certain kids that are good at math, certain kids that enjoy science and history, but all students can relate to the music and the arts. And I think it's not frills, it's the foundation.
Yes.
I do just what you said. I just have soft classical music playing when the kids enter the room. And it just sets that tone and that peacefulness. And then they start asking questions. And then I have classical music set to, like, I teach 7th grade, so BTS playing, and they're like, oh, wait, hey, I like this. And then the school that Arthur and I taught at, it was an arts infused school. So we had to, every lesson that we created had to have an arts theme to it. And we saw those relationships getting much easier to build because you were having conversations about their passions. They were talking about being in the band after school. And we saw our test scores,
Just
sky
soar.
as well. Yeah. So
Yes.
that's, to me, it's the universal language. Every student can connect to it, and it gives them, something to grow on later in life beyond the report cards and all that.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the arts as a whole is something that we do every day. It starts with our heartbeat. Wake up. Our heartbeat, that motivates us to get up, and we start moving, and I think it's something that we do every day, and it's not a hobby. And if you tap into that or help someone else tap into that, then you'll see a change in them.
Nice.
And I think it's important that they listen to or read or visualize by seeing art, something that's more positive for the world, because it has a profound effect on your brain and your heart. What you listen to, what you put in your ears is very important. But then once you become versed enough to understand that, then you can look at all art and understand what it is, and not all, you don't have to soak that in. What that is. You don't have to soak it in. You can see it and you can appreciate it, but you don't have to soak it into your being. Once you understand that and become aware how powerful the arts are, music, drawing, the dance, chants. Once you understand that, it's probably, in my opinion, and it's a humble opinion, it's the most powerful thing on the earth.
It feels like the game changer. If we're all out here seeking to raise test scores and close achievement gaps, but we're taking away the art and the music classes. Now I'll give them test prep all day. And the test scores are not getting better. They're actually getting worse.
Right.
And if we tap into kids' creativity and just like use that as the like entry point for really getting to know them, like Sandy did in her class, like I think it's the game changer. It's just having these conversations like this and getting people who are in district positions to actually listen to what you're saying. Go to your website and just see all that you've been able to accomplish. I think you got the game changer. I'm convinced. And it didn't take me. I love music and art, even though I can't sing or draw, but that's another story for part 2.
It helps me every day, so when I get up and it's time to get things going and go play a show or something, I'm tired, my body aches a little bit, but by the second measure of the first song,
yes, you got it.
I'm into a whole nother zone of my whole body, my whole being is in another place. And it's just, it's that powerful.
Yes.
Without getting into biblical stuff, but it's very spiritual. And it's a very vulnerable place to be. So it's good for people to be aware and to trust others when you're being vulnerable like that with that music. But it's very, very, very powerful. I love it. I love the response to get from the kids and to see them, and especially when they run up to you and start showing you stuff that they taken from your
Yes,
teaching, and now they're at home doing it on their own. Well, look at
yes.
this. Miss Thompson, let
That's
me
it.
sing this song. Let me show you. It's like, what? Okay. Now
That's
we
it. That's it. You got them.
yeah, the garden is full. It's
Yes.
growing. Yeah. It's
But
beautiful.
thank you too so very much. I can't wait to get to that website as soon as we are done. And I just appreciate your energy around this topic and the fact that you've given us some strategies that parents and teachers can use but I see this turning into a bunch of people wanting to get you on Zoom to do stuff with their kids.
That'd
I'm
be great.
I'm excited. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you,
Thank
Gloria.
you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Keep doing the good work you're doing, letting people know information. That's awesome. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you.